Thank you, KEPSHA Chairman Mr. Nzioka, the National Executive Committee, the National Government Council of KEPSHA, all educators in attendance, the over 10,000 delegates, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dr. Purity Ngina. I work for a research organization called ZizAfri. We conduct research and generate evidence on foundational learning, on parental engagement, and on life skills and values. And our vision is that every child should get the skills for learning, living, and thriving. I'm supposed to talk about educating the head, the heart, and the hand, just to correct, not the mind. And those three things for me are very fundamental. And I'll start this conversation with a story of someone called Lazarus, or Lazarus, Polga. He lived in Hungary, and he was born in 1946. And he wanted to prove that everybody is born a genius. He studied over 400 biographers, of course, of his time, people like Socrates, people like Einstein, and he was mesmerized by realization that they all started very young. He wanted to prove that everyone is born with immense potential, that if a parent took the right approach to child upbringing, you could turn any healthy newborn into a genius. He would share this eureka moment with his long-term girlfriend called Clara, who was a language teacher from Ukraine, with request that they could marry and use their children for research. And she agreed. Of course, she was in love. They discussed the best fields to venture in, from mathematics to language to poetry. And they settled on chess, because both of them were not good in chess playing or chess as a game. So they knew no one would argue with the fact that he was able to prove that. The experiment started in 1960, late 1960. Some people would say it started in 1970, with simple premise that any child has innate capacity to become a genius in every chosen field. They decided to homeschool their children, to introduce them to chess. In the living room, in the toilet, everywhere, there were chess books, chess toys. And the three girls that they got, Susa, Sofia, and Judith, would become the greatest chess player. Even now, I think we still celebrate those women, especially one of them who became, for 20 years, the high-ranked chess player in the world. So Lazarus was able to prove that everybody is born a genius. And that is where, for me, I want us to start this conversation. That we need to understand that all the children that we get in our classroom, they have immense potential. And we just need to educate them, to educate their head, to educate their heart, and to educate their minds. And I look at it in three ways. The power of assessment. Teachers, all of us, me included, I'm a teacher of maths and chemistry. We are the Lazarus to the learners. You expose them to everything, but also identify what is good in them. Assessment, for example, especially formative assessment, is your tool to say Amina is good in STEM, or Amina is good in social sciences, or Amina is good in arts. This calling and a mind shift is even more important and urgent in the context of CBC. But remember, Amina is born a genius to become the greatest. So assessment is very critical, especially when you think about the senior school and how we want, and the three pathways we want for our children. The power of research. I can't really underscore the importance of evidence. If you look at the three girls of Mr. Lazarus, it is because the father had read 400 biographers of great men and women that he was able to realize that there's something special about how you raise your children. Similarly, CBC is a very novel curriculum. If you ask many of us before yesterday when we had Professor Ongondo taking us through what is CBC and the 5 things he talked about, probably We were all lost. Is it a content? Is it pedagogy? Is it instruction? What is it for sure? If someone was to ask, your neighbor was to ask, explain to me what CBC is all about, what would you say? What would be your response? Is it the change in content? If you go to class and you taught maybe an non-CBC class and you exposed them to maths, has the content changed? Or is it our pedagogy and our instruction that need to change so that we become facilitators? As school leaders, we have to be in the forefront of helping teachers understand the power of research and evidence. We must be the people who bring the learning to learn competence, which is part of the 7 core competencies. Through research, we shall be innovative and creative. We shall challenge our thoughts and have a paradigm shift. This is why for us at ZizAfri, we believe in power of evidence on what works, but in what context, not just what works. The power of collaboration. I think all of us appreciate the power of collaboration. We, for example, and you can read from the magazine that you have on page 42, we have collaborated with many stakeholders and developed assessment tool for those core competencies, the complex one. And 47 of East Africans have been trained on how to assess core competencies, and 45,000 adolescents assessed. And we have contributed to the national conversations and also feeding back to SDG 4.7. I look at my story working for ZizAfri and the story of Lazarus and the wife Clara of collaboration for a common good, education. We need to cultivate the power of whole school approach. We need to cultivate the power of whole school approach and community approach, learning beyond the classroom walls, where the community and the parents are involved. For instance, the CBC has emphasized 7 core competencies and 7 values, and I want to pick one of them, self-efficacy, and tell you a bit of my story. In 2002, I sat for KCPE in a very small school called Bereri Primary School in the slopes of Mount Kenya. My mother, though uneducated, could tell me the power of education, but that time it was not real. I got 235 marks, but she insisted that purity, believe in yourself, you can do this. In 2003, I would sit for another KCPE exam, and I got 369 marks after 1 year of believing the words of my mother. And 16 years later, in 2018, I would become the youngest person to get a PhD in mathematics in this country. Thank you. If you look at my story of this girl who disseminates information on how to secure ourselves, we saw young people shopping for the elderly. We saw the police even burying our people. That is so much love. That is the heart. And the hand, until the heart is educated to love, to care, to show kindness, to promote peace, to respect, to empathize in the area of emotional intelligence, to help the world achieve global peace, and to avoid catastrophes of wars like the ones happening currently in Russia, Ukraine, Palestine, and Israel, even closer home, Niger and Mali, and others, which brings humanitarian suffering, especially to children and women. Mahatma Gandhi's last words in his memo, touching on holistic education to humanity, goes by the quote, "Education without character makes one a little devil." In this line, and in an effort to address Mahatma Gandhi's last wishes in education, let's endeavor, ladies and gentlemen, to educate the head, to educate the heart, and to educate the heart. If this has to be done, we in this room have to be at the forefront. Remember, Amina is born with immense potential. Let's nurture her. I thank you, ladies and gentlemen.